Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. A little bit of a funky start here, but we actually have a huge day today here at the Uncertainty webinar. We have my colleagues who are going to be making their way back. They paid their Campbell soup can rental for the month. For millennials, that's a joke that I'll explain to you later, but it's actually a cartoon that people used to communicate with a Campbell soup can and a string through it. So my fellow baby boomers were really jacked up and really laughing their tails off right now. For those of you that are coming in, we apologize for your technical difficulties. And there's my friend Bob. Bob's on. And as we bring everybody back, we are recovering, and it's just that time of the time of history where we're in a recovery position on the backside of a pandemic, still in the pandemic, if you will. But as it relates to dentistry and dental practices, we are going next Monday. We will have our final practices opening in Pennsylvania. So they will be the last group. New York and Pennsylvania will be our last group of dental practices. So it's been a long run. It's week 15, right? Are we week 15 now, which is incredible because we skipped 13, right, Steve? So we're we just did like the elevator. We skipped week 13 and we got right to 14, and now we're at 15. And I am so grateful to have the master he's a master of many things. Brilliant gentleman, dear friend of over, I don't know, how long has it been, Michael? For 25 years. You've, bought products from companies that he's influenced. He's a master at really understanding consumer behavior. And he's going to be talking about the new patient and how to create an experience for that new patient. And there's nobody with more wisdom than Michael in this area. And you know him well because he named my first book, $1 Million Dentistry. And he named our community the Complete Health Dental Community. So, he's had his influence on many, many things like that. So first, I just want to say thank you, Michael, for being here today.
It is a huge honor. It's 23 years we're friends. And
thank you.
For everybody listening in, you can imagine the joy of that long, beautiful ride. So thanks for the honor of being here.
You bet, Michael. We're going to get to you, and we save the best for last. So you'll be finishing today, and we have our format, which is we go through each of the areas of expertise and share from these different perspectives, and it allows us to really hunker down and provide what's happening in the industry and what to do now. And I really want to dialogue with Brian today. I want to start out with Brian because Brian has been he's brought us teledentistry. He's really way bigger than the conversation of teledentistry. And, for those of you, I'm really seeing a big separation of hugely successful practices right now and the practices that went in pre-pandemic. What I'm seeing, Steve's nodding his head, those that had weaknesses prior, those weaknesses are magnified right now. So if it was a team, magnified. If it was finances, magnified. If it was leadership, magnified. So we really dug in as this group and to really give direction around this area. But the biggest area that Brian and I have really identified is, the senior people even that are driving our industry. Have we heard from the ADA? Has anybody heard from the ADA? In some areas of some of the structures. I'm not dissing on the ADA. They have their place in the world. But, Brian and I have discussions, and Brian, welcome and good to see you.
Great, thanks for having me. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, so I want to start the discussion out today about, if you're afraid to change right now in dentistry and you hate change, right now is the best time to change. Why? Because change is happening everywhere else. You couldn't be in a safer place to change than right now. And so, whether it's going on in reforms or whatever it is, Brian and I have been in a discussion about reforming dentistry. And not only is Brian stating it, he's doing something about it. And, one of the things, we have a mantra every year. Our mantra has been in 2020, envision success. We played off the 2020 vision, envision success, ha ha. That was in October of last year, and we stepped out and put that out in January, and then March something brand new. So we have a new mantra, which is 2000.5, so 2020.5, which is 2020 and a half, because we're taking a half year, and it's about disrupting dysfunction. Disrupting dysfunction. So where there's just dysfunction, let's get straight about it. And Brian, let's talk about it for a second here.
Great. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that's, as you know, Gary, that's something that I've been kind of about bringing the industry up to date for quite a while. And the reason why I laughed when you're talking about the ADA is because I have 3 certified letters from the ADA in the last few weeks that I have heard from them based on what we're doing with Dental Standards Institute, which is a new standard development organization for the industry. We have 7 standards in development right now, including everything from definition of dental metrics. For example, there's no clearly defined like what is an active patient, to therapeutic virtual reality, which is something that I'm actively involved with. So for people who want to be involved, go to dentalstandardsinstitute.com. But I know that it's kind of off topic of what we're doing with teledentistry, although we are doing a standard for teledentistry too. But it is, I agree with you completely, Gary, that this is it just shows the weaknesses, not just in offices, but in the organizations that are leading the industry. And there's a lot of misconceptions that, what roles each organization in the industry does. For example, I hear a lot of people say, why doesn't the ADA mandate X, Y, or Z? They don't really have the authority. That's really left to the boards of dentistry. So no, that's, again, not really dissing on anybody. I just feel like, especially when it comes to technology and patient advocacy, I think were the 2 really missing pieces in our profession. And then I know you've been really leading the charge that right now what it's really showing is that I believe our industry has right now people are feeling good because the offices that have opened have 3 months of backlog. They're getting close to full production, probably not full production, but close to it. But I think there's going to be we have had some pent up demand. And so now is not the time to take the foot off the gas. Now is the time to automate, look at your business systems, work with, great consultants like NextLevel to really make sure that you can do, be profitable doing less, I believe, and honing in those systems. And I think we as an industry have to do that too. So I think that a lot of dentists I talk to are very optimistic now because as they've reopened, they're close to full capacity. But there could be a pullback. We might have to go into lockdown again. In which case, I think the likelihood is small. But if that happens again, you certainly want to be prepared with teledentistry and paperless forms and get your acting gear. Or if you unfortunately would have a COVID outbreak in your office, you'd have to shut down for a couple weeks, right? So doing what we can to protect ourselves, and then also long term, I think, focusing on the things that we should have been doing 6 months ago as an industry, right? And that is not, that's, I think, reducing a lot of fat, getting lean, automating, leveraging technology in ways that we haven't as an industry before. So yeah, no, it's great to partner with you on it, man.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having the vision, Brian. Like, this Dental Standards Institute is like defining how things are going to be running. And we're not going to be spending our time defending amalgams. We're going to spend our time moving forward into the future. And we had an initiative with the ADA. They were going to send out a mailer to every dentist in the US about complete health dentistry, and they decided not to. So the AGD decided to step in, and they are sending it out in July and August. So please see, you're going to be seeing and supported with Care Credit. Thank you, Steve, for your support, and Care Credit and the AGD. There's going to be a whole new initiative around educating our dentists for whole body health, because like Brian said, we need to do better dentistry and more dentistry, not so much higher volume dentistry, to be able to be successful. We've reconfigured compensation programs so that our hygienists can be educating and getting their remuneration that way, because we had to expand hygiene appointments. There's all kinds of things going on depending on the the state you're in and the regulations that exist around that. So Brian, thank you for the lead. You're going to be hearing a lot about reform and redesign. So reform and redesign. If you want anything specifics with regard to taking care of your own practice, we have the relaunch program, and that's available to you. You can click on that link. Brian, thank you so much for bringing teledentistry and innovation to our great industry. I wanted to go out to Tanya, who Tanya has some updates on the latest in and around clinical dentistry and some initiatives that people can take on as well. By the way, PerioProtect is blowing up in all the practices that I've had conversations with. So thanks for having a product that really makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you guys for paying attention to it. You know, we've been talking for so long about how important it is to have a healthy immune system. This, of course, has always been important, but people are thinking about it more now. And chronic gum disease typically doesn't hurt, right? Sometimes people don't even know they have it, but it is a burden on your immune system. And it is important. Your oral health matters. And we want not just to get this message out to the dental offices, but also make it available for your patients. So if you want to mark your calendars, July 14th, we're running a masterclass for patients, trying to explain the associations between oral health and the burdens on the immune system. This is going to run through the My Patient Care system. And if anybody wants information about that, in the chat, I think it's going to be, there's going to put up a link there where you can get information about this. You could market this yourself, right? We have all the materials. You could market it yourself, but that requires that somebody do it and that you be on task doing it. And so what My Patient Care system does, it's run through NextLevel Practice. It's an automated system that will direct messaging to your patients. They opt in, they don't keep getting messages. They opt in, say they want more information, and then they register for the class. The point of the class, which is this one, is going to be taught by Dwayne Keller. He's the founder and chief scientific officer at PerioProtect. He talks to patients all day long. Nobody's prescribed more trays than him. He knows what he's doing. But he'll talk to patients like they're patients, and the call to action is to go back to your practice and get the health care that they need. So that's July 14th. And if you're not part of the My Patient Care automated system, the links are coming up. Secondly, free for anybody who wants it. We've talked a lot about the IRX protocol, that initial prescription protocol where you use trays before you would do anything else. So many patients in delayed care, so many patients who need this. It's a PerioProtect study club. And it's going to feature this protocol, and two of the rock stars in the complete health community, Michelle Huckey and Isaac Comfortis. I say all of you guys are my favorites, but I really do love these two people. They will be presenting their cases and talking about how they use prescription trays to get patients healthier. And what you're going to see are the healthy results. And it is just designed to inspire you to start thinking about treating your patients differently. So that course, that study club meets on the 23rd of July. So it's next week, Tuesday. It's free. You can come, you can drop in. There'll be 3 cases, and then Dwayne will be talking a little bit about chronic wound care and chronic inflammation from a scientific point of view. We're also, actually, you could just sign up for NextLevel Practice, or you could come to the 7 Keys to Success with PerioProtect, because what we do is we survey our most successful offices and we figure out what they're doing. Our most successful offices are in NextLevel Practice, but we're boiling it down for you here as to some of the steps you could take. That's June 26th, and that's a Friday, next Friday. And again, all the links are showing up in your chat. So all these are free. If you want to register for this, you're available. And Gary, I just want to put a plug out for the Proactive Practice course that's coming up. This is a course that NextLevel Practice is running. You do 2 a year, I think it's 2. July, I want to say 24th and 25th. It's right around them. It's virtual this time.
Yeah.
But here's why this course is important.
23, 24.
23, 24. The reason why I think this course is so important is because we're talking about the power of a community. There is so much power in this community of complete health practice providers. You know, there are sessions that meet when you guys don't see, there's apps, there's meetings offline, there's these kind of meetings. And these are providers who really are trying to troubleshoot how to make their care better, how to make themselves more efficient, how to reward their teams, how to grow their teams. And I don't mean grow in the sense of like numbers, I mean like personal development, because that's what NextLevel excels at, right? Making you a better care provider and making you better too. And we're talking about sustainable change. That's what the community helps you do. And now that you've got this new training system that I know you're going to roll out, which is automated training, it's a way to do this following what's already worked. You've got patterns that already work. So that Complete Health Practice course, July 23rd and 24th, online, and registration is here. We're going to be supporting it, and I hope as many people as can will attend. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. You got like a whole college going on there.
I know, I got so much stuff rolling around right now. I'm just trying to keep my dates straight.
Wow. If you wanted education, you got it from Tanya. Thank you so much. Steve, tell us what's happening with the landscape of the world of dentistry, Steve Parker.
Wow.
Steve Parker, our resident editor of The Profitable Dentist. He has his hands in every state, every practice. I mean, 125,000 dental practices that this guy's plugged into. So he's hot stuff and knows his stuff. Steve, what's happening?
I think that's it. I think I'm done right there, Gary. I can't get any better than that. No, I did want to say a couple things. Number one, Tanya is spot on. You have an amazing community here. So just so you know, Gary, one of the things that I appreciate is the people who watch have reached out a lot. And, you know, while I don't have any favorites, hang on. So I just want to move on from there. I know Barb's watching because I can see her over in the side here.
I love it.
So again, great people. And I think Tanya is right on. That's what makes this community really awesome. The ADA, I have had a couple of conversations myself. One thing I would say about the ADA right now, and I think Brian is doing something really interesting in standards. You know, I'm a business guy. I come from the world of standards. And just in definitions, Brian is spot on. What is an active patient? So for those of you who have been in practice and worked with coaches or consultants or, you know, anybody who just gone online and said, hey, what is an active patient? There are definitions all over the map. So when I say I have 2,200 active patients and Brian says he has 2,200 active patients, we could literally be talking about two completely different things. So what I'm seeing from the ADA is just a recognition of that kind of thing. The second evolution of that, and I've been on a couple of panels and some bigger, higher level conversations about, you know, I know the future of dentistry sounds a little high and lofty, but it is sort of, you know, where do we think this thing is going? And is this a pivotal moment or not? I happen to think it is. But one of those is just an understanding or respect for the fact that 84% of dentists own a practice. They're entrepreneurs. And dental school, you know, until recently, and still not so much, you know, threw in a few hours in your fourth year. And, you know, guys like Brian can attest to that. I mean, you don't learn it. You learn all your clinical skills and you're kicked out in the world to be an entrepreneur. And there's no other industry like that. So I have heard that concept sprinkling into conversation and less about, oh, we should throw out some business courses, you know, let's get back to arguing about amalgams. And really the fact that, you know, bankruptcy is a critical issue. Mental health is a critical issue. All the stress and anxiety are huge, especially in the last 90 days. And it's not the dentistry, it's the practice ownership part. So a couple things that are happening in the industry real quickly. One is it looks like EIDL loans are dropping, and Bob can probably speak to that. It looks like those are finally, you know, Bob can speak to whether it was 10 days or 20 days, 3 months ago when they did this, but, you know, they're starting to finally come through. I'm hearing a lot of docs say, should I take them? I'll let, again, Bob, this is his area, but, you know, my opinion has been it's money that's 3.75%. You can take now. You know, we don't know what's going to happen through the end of the year. So if you don't know, take the loan, stick it in an account over here. You don't have to start paying it back for a year, and then it's 30 years. And if it turns out January or February, you don't need it, just give it back. And it costs you this much. But if you know, things dip in November, December, and you do need it, and you're going to go to the bank, like the other, I don't know, 321 million businesses that do it, you know, it's a whole different set of problems for you. So right now, take cheap money, park it in an account, and just, you know, see if you need it or not. And if you don't take the loan, just give it right back, and it's, you know, it's cheap. The other thing is, I talked to my friends over at DSG, Dental Services Group. I think I said 3 or 4 episodes ago, one of the indicators I've looked for is dental labs. They're seeing work at about 85 to 90% across the country, which is a dramatic increase. So the places like Gary was saying, maybe in New York or California that are starting to come back is being made up by the ones that are already back. You know, dentistry is not like a restaurant where, you know, for the last 90 days, people aren't going to say, oh man, I would have gone to your restaurant 4 times. So I'm going to go 5 times next week and catch up. You know, they just lost that revenue. Well, in dentistry, you got an opportunity to catch up going backwards, and how you manage that is important to your cash flow. And then I would say the last thing is, this morning I was on 2 different calls where I've heard, and I'm trying to think of the right verbiage to use, but sort of a modification of PPE and our feelings toward PPE in the office. And not that they're backing off, but a lot of practices have come to me and said, you know, 3 weeks ago, I was paying $20 a piece for N95 masks because nobody was coming back until we had them. And now after 2 to 3 weeks, they're okay with level 3 masks. They're hot and they're sweaty and they can't use them. So you're seeing a leveling out. And I think the message here is nobody really knows what that's going to do. Work with your practice. Level 3 meets the CDC guidelines and the ADA guidelines. And if your team's okay with that and your patients are okay with that, be okay with that. And 6 months from now, if there's a new standard that comes out that says we've got to use N95 masks, you can always go to it. But I'm hearing people who are sort of backing off of not in an unsafe way, but in a not over safe way, if that makes sense. So I heard 2 of those this morning that really, you know, just kind of jumped out at me that we're okay without having N95 masks right now. So that's it. That's everything I've gotten written down here, Gary.
Thanks.
And I didn't want to forget, you know.
Yeah. Hi, Barb.
I don't have favorites.
Very nicely done. And we'll say a big shout out to Barb in Columbus, Ohio, the only dentist working under the roof with a cardiologist.
Yes.
The only one on the planet, and the first ever. And it's really exciting. We're going to go to Bob in a second. And I posted this. If you're not on, it says, how's the economy doing? Watch the dentist, a crucial indicator of whether Americans feel safe returning to normal activities. So I posted that in the WhatsApp group. Dentistry is making a huge impact in the unemployment, because when we all came back, it was huge numbers dipped. And also we are the barometer industry that actually is the indicator for all industries. So it's really, they're looking at us closely, and it was a great article, and it's in the WhatsApp group. Bob, man, great stuff happening in the financial front and the financial markets. You know, we have banks shutting down and tightening up a little bit, and then they're opening up over here. So you got to really know how to maneuver this. And Bob's got some information for us today. Bob, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's always my pleasure, Gary. Thank you so much. And I just love being a part of this panel. I just want to really quickly share with all of you how proud I am, because I've had a lot of doctors that have actually joined this webinar, obviously the past couple of weeks. And I can tell you that every time I'm talking to them, I always like to add in there all the different services that we all provide them. And every single one of them that I've talked to are very excited to really get this, either get it going in their practice or they've already got it going. So I just want to say thank you so much, because I am very proud to be a part of all of this. So with that said, we always know that I always love to come in with a presentation to show everyone. And I'll also use it as my guide just to walk me through, obviously, the trends that are going on within the industry. Definitely, we will talk about the EIDL loan. I've definitely heard a lot of doctors that are receiving that loan right now. And I'm going to talk to you just a few minutes about what they're doing with that money. And I definitely think that Steve is right on. They are I'm parking that money for right now, but there are ways to be able to utilize those funds. So I definitely will talk about that. So obviously, as far as the lenders are concerned, lenders right now are definitely, backing off a little bit, but also slowly moving out at the same time. So I think that you're going to see a lot of lenders coming back out again and looking to lend, but they're looking for the trends of what's actually going on right now and how these practices are coming back. Definitely throughout the past couple of weeks, I've definitely been talking to a lot of dentists that would like to sell their practice, whether it is because they may be at an older age that they don't feel comfortable about coming back to the practice, or they just don't want to put up with all the stuff that's going on and just would rather get out at this point. The other one that I'm really seeing a lot of, and I think we talked about this last time, was the mergers. We're seeing a lot of doctors take advantage of wanting to look for other ways to grow their practices. And this is obviously a great way for immediate growth for buyers. And obviously for the sellers, they can still be able to work with the new buyer that's purchasing their practice, allowing them to still work because they want to and not because they have to, and now they don't really have to focus on the business side of it. We're also seeing partnerships as well. So those are the things that I've been really talking to lately. But the lender trends I want to get into really quick is really what they're looking at right now is they would like to see that the practices are at least at 70% capacity as far as their production and collections. And they'll obviously want to start to see ongoing trends to get back to 100%. Prefer lending to existing practices first. I think that their real comfort level right now are really looking to those practices that are possibly wanting to refinance, consolidate their debt. And I think they feel more comfortable with more established practice right now. Mergers and partnerships, I think they are looking at that and loving that idea as well, because it does add more cash flow to the whole situation when they're looking at lending to that. Straight acquisitions, I can tell you, based on what I'm seeing right now on acquisitions, where the doctor would like to sell their practice and walk away, I'm seeing that it's probably a great time for a buyer to buy the practice because they could probably get it at a bit lesser price. But for the seller, I think if they are really stuck on wanting to get a specific price for the practice, they may start to see seller notes or carrybacks coming in. So I want you to be, conscious of that as well, and just know that is possibly happening right now. I have seen it with a couple. Lenders cautiously opening up with new credit guidelines is really what's happening all across the board. So does selling or merging your practice make sense for you? I would say that, the best thing that you could do to determine that is obviously have an overall picture of your current practice and how it stands right now. And then primarily from that, let's review the financial health of what's going on with your current practice right now, do a practice evaluation, a practice snapshot to see how it looks by merging in another practice into your practice. Where opportunities for growth are going to come in for that. We want to also look at customized marketing evaluations as well for your practice and understand what's your end game when you're ready to actually retire. So with that, I would say let's perform the practice cash flow analysis and how much can you save on that. And complete personalized practice cash flow analysis will help you to really determine how well that you're able to do more things within your practice. And then obviously, if you would like to purchase some additional equipment for the practice, which I have been talking to a lot of doctors now that are really kind of looking at that and wanting to take advantage of purchasing more equipment. For their practice, we're talking about that, and we want to make sure the practice can financially afford to actually, purchase that equipment. And financially purchasing another practice, does it all make sense? So we want to make sure we're looking at that. We want to take a deep dive into the systems of your practice and basically review and do a business evaluation. It's time to rebuild on a strong foundation for the practice. And reviewing and analyzing the systems in your team are going to be key. I think everybody's really talked about that today. And opportunities for growth and creating a plan that fits your overall vision for your and purpose. So again, if you would like to have a consultation to discuss these items, I'm always available for you to talk.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep, absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thanks for bringing us up to date on what's going on in the world of finance and money around practice. And Sean Stifler, I got your name right today. Thank God. I blew it last week. And you're going to set up our speaker, Michael Fishman, because Sean really knows what's going on in the world of search and SEO and understanding what's going on from that perspective. And then he's going to set up our super special guest. We're going to get right to Michael Fishman after Sean brings us up to speed. Please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. And just a couple quick notes here. A survey came out this morning that surveyed 1,300 local marketing agencies. 80% of them said that they are purchasing local ads on Google. And why that's important is in this time where there's been a contraction of money and spend from clients, we're seeing like a resurgence of spend. And when our clients are asking us, how do we get more new patients? Paying for ads is really dangerous right now. You have cost per click going through the roof. It's a very expensive way to generate more new patients. And so what this means is we need to find a different way of generating interest for your practice, which means content marketing. Having a fast website, having relevant content, and interesting content. What you all may find interesting is our clients are seeing 20% growth and traffic to their websites week over week. So we have a roll-up of all of our websites we've ever created and launched. And so we're tracking analytics and we're seeing increased traffic, so pent-up demand like Dr. Laskin was talking about. We're seeing that people are looking for dentistry again. You can likely make up some of that lost revenue, like Steve was talking about, but there's a way to do it. And paying for them right now with ads is very expensive. We wouldn't recommend it. You need to publish legitimately like interesting content, long form content. We can help with that, but we also want to give you takeaways. And these are things that you can do and write about dental procedures and how your practice is different and how you can help. Publish it to social, and that will help garner some interest from organic traffic. And then make it easy to communicate with a practice. With chat features, paperless forms, make the experience smooth, like with OperaDDS and our Dr. Genius patient experience solution. Those are some key takeaways we're seeing in trends. And you also need to know where you're at. So there should be a link shared that we'd be happy to generate a GeoCanvas report, and it's going to show you where do you rank right now for your top 2 or 3 keywords that you're most interested in, and then we can give you a complimentary evaluation of how to improve that. But certainly don't purchase traffic right now. It's very, very expensive, and that's going to be a way to pay a lot for patients when you can do it organically at a much better cost per acquisition. That's all I got, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. And we just put that link up. And if you want to have fun, there's nothing more fun to see how your website's performing in your marketplace. Sean does the most amazing job on his analysis. And I was just in awe on what you can actually find out and know. It's really kind of weird. It's almost like not fair. It's an unfair advantage for your website. So Sean, thank you for providing
Absolutely
for our community.
Thank you.
We're grateful for that. And now I get to, wow, this is a privilege. 23 years of just pure joy and fun and brilliance. This man is and he's going to hate that I'm going to say it, one of the smartest guys I know. He's going to cringe over that because he's a humble gentleman, but he really is brilliant. And we're so grateful to have Michael on to talk about the consumer, like each year he has a consumer health summit where he brings the greatest minds. It's like 80, 90 people in a room every May. I think it's May or April. And they geek out on how consumer health is thought about, how it's distinguished, what the trends are, who's hot, who's not, and why. And so I love my relationship with Michael, and thank you for your contributions over all these years, Michael.
Oh my goodness. Well, thanks for the honor of being here. It's funny, in the age of Zoom, you see what you find out is that all these great speakers have been kind of hiding out, and then when you put them on a camera, they come to life, right? So incredible group. I'm honored to be here, and thank you so much. You know, as Gary mentioned, I lead a founder community called Consumer Health Summit since 1994. Those are some of the leading and upcoming founders in health and nutrition, supplements, apps, wearables, best-selling authors in the space, that kind of thing. You know, the beautiful thing is that while a lot of the mantras, a lot of the methodology and protocols and thinking and even science around health and wellness have changed over the years, and certainly in the 30 years I've been supporting it and advising those kinds of companies, what we're, you know, what you can appreciate is that the psychology is what we could call the through line. In other words, human beings are constituted psychologically very, you know, essentially the same over those 30 years, let's say. And, you know, the tools are different, or the way in which we're dealing with people in a clinical situation or over the internet or through a mail piece. The tactics and the particulars of those ways of communicating are different, but what's happening in their brain when you talk to them, when you interact with them, when you put something in front of them, is a very predictable phenomenon, or a very predictable receipt, a very predictable reception of those kinds of messages. So in many respects, and I advise those same kinds of founders on growing their business with integrity, with a focus on the customer, and always doing the right thing for the customer, or in, of course, the case of the clinician, the patient. So consumer psychology, as Gary mentioned, is my passion, and it's the lens through which I see customer communication, patient communication. And I think harnessing some of those insights is the way not only to be as compassionate and as caring as possible as healers, as caring people, but also it leads to the lengthiest relationships, it leads to referrals, it leads to the kind of raving fans and storytellers and ambassadors that really talk about companies, that talk about practices, that talk about the way they were treated, that talk about something that was surprising. They were afraid, but it turned out great, something of that nature. So with, you know, in this age of COVID, and as Gary mentioned, hopefully on the backside of it, you know, we'd love to not see this expand again in the fall, of course. But what I've been talking to my founders about is what I call customers, or in this case, patients of urgency. Now, I realize a lot of practices have been closed for the last several months, some open on an emergency basis only. But as Tanya mentioned before, there are some kinds of things that we really focus on, or that are magnified or amplified at this period of time, that really are evergreens, you know, or that on the backside of COVID and, you know, just some of the things that are happening in our country, whether it's, you know, racial unrest, whether it's COVID, there's really a multi-layered phenomenon now where people's amygdalas are on fire. Right? We're here in a sense to have people feel safe, to have people taken care of. And where they're experiencing that, in one manner of speaking, is the amygdala, is that part of the brain that is, you know, the limbic system, that's programmed for survival, that's programmed for the perpetuation of that animal, right? And so we want people to feel safe. And the interesting thing is a lot of the ways in which people feel safe, they couldn't report to you even if you asked them a series of questions. You know, they don't report, you know, a typeface as being safe. They don't report a color as being safe. They don't report words or but, you know, the limbic response in many cases is what's running the show. And the more we can understand what's happening for patients and customers in not only in their awareness, but in what they cannot report, the better the experience that they have. So the first thing I would say is, you know, either for patients that were first time, that were originated during COVID or when the office opened and came in with something urgent. Now, clinicians are seeing patients coming in with something urgent all the time. It's some percentage of the practice, right? But for a patient who has originated in urgency, it's important to acknowledge that, and you probably see this even in, you know, outside of the COVID era, people that come in a state of urgency, I think need to be acknowledged for the fact that they came in a state of urgency, but we want to support you and your family going forward. If they come in with something urgent, with something symptomatic, with something unbearable, They're going to look for a resource. They're not going to, the process of identifying a new practitioner won't be as discerning as if they move to a new town and there's no emergency and they're just trying to find a great practitioner for themselves and their family. So when somebody comes in with urgency, with pain, with something symptomatic that's urgent, I always advise, let's say, a clinician or even a founder of a company that's selling supplements, let's say, if somebody's reaching for something for a dental emergency, for immunity in the supplement world, it's important to acknowledge that group of people that say came in the last 90 days. We want to acknowledge that you joined us or you came in as a patient or you came in as a customer during a sensitive time, during a time where you really needed us. You know, perhaps you didn't do the fullest investigation that you otherwise might have. We want you to know how much we appreciate you. We want you to know that we're here to support you and your family going forward. And it's really 1 or 2 emails, 1 or 2 letters, 1 or 2 communications. You're not speaking to them. You're not putting that label on them forever. You're not labeling them that way forever, but it's 1 or 2 communications as this threat subsides, where you're acknowledging and recognizing them for the mindset within which they came to the practice. And it shows you're paying attention. It's timely, it's compassionate, it's sensitive, and it acknowledges the nature of the choice they made when they made it. And the odds of them staying with the practice are much greater than somebody who reached for emergency support or first-time support and wasn't acknowledged for the reason or the psychology behind that choice. So with my e-commerce companies, supplements and food and beverage, I've been calling it buyers of urgency, and here it would be patients of urgency. So the best way to create affinity, other than having a wonderful environment and the aesthetics, and I know, you know, under Gary's leadership and under Gary, the guidance from Gary and his team, I know how many moving parts. Actually, I don't know how many moving parts there are, but I know there are a lot. One of the things that creates that safety that we're talking about, where someone comes away with a great experience, feels acknowledged, feels taken care of, is language. The linguistics and the words that are being spoken from participants in the practice, either the doctor, you know, him or herself, and other team members in the practice. So a couple of key things. Number one, you don't want to be easily understood, which sounds like a good thing. You want to be impossible to misunderstand. And you can appreciate there's a difference there. And particularly inside of companies and practices, there is jargon. There are words that the team is getting so comfortable with that there develops an assumption that patients and people coming in know those words. And I don't know the vocabulary and the glossary in the dental space, so please forgive me, but I'm sure you can all come up with examples of words that get a lot of discussion and frequent usage in the practice that patients don't necessarily know. So you want to go for something bigger than easily understood. You want to be impossible to misunderstand. And a good way to do that, which doesn't, and it never comes across like you're dumbing anything down, but really it comes across as compassion. And look, what people want in a vulnerable situation like a dentist office is compassion. And program your speech to be talking to like a middle school assembly, 6th and 7th and 8th graders, and you can never go wrong. No matter the education level of who you're talking about, a dentist office, of course, they're becoming better and better and more pleasant places. A lot of them resemble spas these days, right? But dentistry can be scary, right? So be impossible to misunderstand. The other thing around words is you want people to understand you, but even more than that, you want them to feel understood by you. And this is another phenomenon that really happens and embeds when you're using the words that your patient would use in their discussion with a friend or a family member. And if you need to use language that isn't in their normal glossary, their normal vocabulary in everyday speaking, even in the verbal interaction, say, I want to talk to you about the, mandibular joint, whatever, TMJ, let's just say, which is, and explain. Never put somebody in a position where, because here's the thing, we see the world through frames of, in many cases, what happened to us years, if not decades ago. And the nature of a human being throughout their day, automatically in every culture of the world, is to gather evidence or to identify situations which affirm for them there are different aspects of insecurity. I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not this, I'm not generous enough, I'm not this. And so anytime we put a word in front of somebody or say a word to somebody that they don't know, they won't fault the dentist, they won't fault the hygienist, they won't fault that person. They fault themselves because they failed the vocabulary test 32 years ago. And that's the frame through which they're hearing words they don't understand. Human beings are only a few seconds away from self-condemnation, from a harsh judgment and a harsh assessment of themselves. So if we can know that and be compassionate about it and just be mindful to not trigger people's sense of insufficiency. And the way to do that is to use words that they use, which in most cases can probably be navigated pretty well through most discussions. Or where there's terminology that we want people to understand, to have an appreciation for the treatment that's being suggested, to have an appreciation for what's being said to them, to always immediately define. In writing, we would never end a sentence with a word people don't know and hit a period, because they may not go to the next sentence. Their brain says, this isn't safe, we're out of here. So even in writing or in speaking, it's the word they're not familiar with, comma, which means. And it's just a very compassionate way to walk people through what it is you want them to appreciate and to understand. Another thing that's super interesting, and when I speak, this is a segment that people really enjoy, which I call words to outlaw. And I'm gonna allow Gary's team and clients to identify what these are, but I'll give you a quick example. And a word to outlaw would be a word that would generate fear, that would generate disgust, that would generate unpleasantness, that would generate some kind of response that would be other than the reaction or the response you would want people to have. So many years ago, we had 2 dogs when I was living in Connecticut. And I had to go to the invisible fence company, which is that collar that you put around the dog, and it has a little battery in it, and that your property is wired. And so the dogs you can let them run loose on the property, but they don't cross the boundary of the property, right? Because if they do, they get a little momentary shock. And when you train the dog, they train, and the training process is one shock, and then they get it, and it's done, then never happen again. So I took the collars for the invisible fence to the invisible fence company, which happened to be nearby in Connecticut. And they said, look, they replaced the batteries, and they said, look, when you leave the office, please be very careful how you hold the collars, because the office itself is wired and you don't want to get a correction, right? And I immediately realized there's a word that they've outlawed in their space, in their culture, in their interaction with customers. And the word, of course, is shock, right? They said you'd get a correction. And so it really made it clear to me that, now look, some might say that's a whitewash. Some might say that's a little bit too much of a silver lining. But I'm sure there are examples of, look, even in the medical community, let's say, I'm going in for surgery or I'm going in for a procedure. Which sounds less scary, right? The word procedure is everywhere. Most of the time it's open heart surgery, not an open heart procedure. But there's a lot of, there's a lot that can be called a procedure. So you understand what I'm saying. So what I'm talking about is words to outlaw. And what's a word that's scary or unpleasant that can, with fairness and with integrity, be replaced with another word that makes the overall experience less confronting, okay? Two other things. This is a segment that I call the drivers of desire, which I'm working on a book around this theme, which you'll see, I'm sure, in a year or a year and a half. And the drivers of desire would be the 3 domains or the 3 areas of response where that people would, how would people share their opinion or their response to a particular theme? Like we have this product for you and it'll help you lose weight. Or we have this dental procedure for you and it'll keep your mouth healthy and therefore it'll support the health of the rest of your body. So in the drivers of desire, really, which is to understand what people really want and why they want it, there are 3 areas of response, and that are what people will tell you, which is they're aware of it and they're willing to say it. There's no shame, there's no embarrassment, they're just open about it. So there's what people will tell. There's what people won't tell. Similarly, they're still aware of it, but it's embarrassing, it's private, it's mortifying. It's private, it's embarrassing. They're aware of it, but they won't say it. And then there's what they can't tell, which they do not have awareness of and therefore cannot report it, which is happening once again in the amygdala in their limbic response. So just a quick example of how will tell, won't tell, and can tell actually work. So if we look at let's just say another aspect of health like joint pain. In the fullest expression of pain, an animal in nature is immobilized and therefore can't do 2 very important things: defend itself and gather food. And so in nature, an immobilized animal doesn't last very long. And so for the limbic brain, for our brains that are programmed, I call them factory settings, for our brains which are keeping us alive and surveilling our environment for threats all the time, pain, and particularly pain that impedes mobility, is actually a survival threat. We don't think of pain as a survival threat the way we would cancer or certain other things. But in the limbic response and in the survival-based brain, pain itself is a survival threat. And so the will tell in pain is somebody will report something hurts. People say something hurts all the time. If there's no shame, people will report that. The thing they won't tell, they're aware of it, but they won't say it, could be the extent to which their independence is impeded. They can't necessarily dress themselves. They can't take care of themselves in the fullest manner of independence, right? I mean, when you know someone who's, in their 80s or 90s and super healthy and super independent, what do people say? He or she really gets around. They're like, you talk about mobility, you talk about independence. And when they don't have mobility or independence, there's a shame or an embarrassment to it. That's what they won't tell. And then the last piece is can't tell. Right? And can't tell in, let's say, pain relief would be what I talked about before, that the fullest expression of pain in nature is a survival threat. Human beings don't talk about that. We don't even think about it, but you can appreciate how that works. So that's the drivers of desire, what people will tell, won't tell, and can't tell. And there's no right or wrong answers there, ladies and gentlemen. But it's a worthwhile inquiry or just a discussion to have with the team, kind of a brainstorm to think about what is it that we offer that we could actually tie to human survival, and what are some of the ways we can be compassionate in terms of what people are reporting to us, what they're aware of but might be too embarrassed to report. And then the piece they can't report, but which we still want to be compassionate and mindful of. So when you see a TV commercial for an analgesic, an over-the-counter pain reliever, you see older people hiking, gardening, cycling, playing with their grandkids. The big companies understand this psychology, and they understand that the ability to continue moving is the ability to continue living. And so and as people have an appreciation for the extent to which their dental health is their physical health, is in fact the health of their body, these kinds of considerations with every passing day are going to merge and become, much more relevant and much more appreciated by the people that we talk to that come into our practices and that are already there, who we want to serve them and their families for long periods of time. And the last thing that I want to share with you is just the experience, and I know Gary talks about this, if not directly, but in terms of creating an amazing experience for patients, is just this idea of hospitality. And that hospitality doesn't just happen in restaurants or hotels, but that it happens for sure in dental practices, in healthcare practices. And a wonderful book on the subject is written by a restaurateur named Danny Meyer. And the book is called Setting the Table, The Transforming Power of Hospitality in Business. And the thing that he says, and which I'll leave you with, is that hospitality is present when things are happening for you, and hospitality is absent when things are happening to you. And I know that's a subtle distinction, which I know this group can appreciate. So I hope this was supportive. If you do have questions, Gary, you and your team can route them to me, or I'm happy to share an email. Always, anyone who is connected to Gary, I always want to be supportive of. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. That was amazing, and it really gives me a lot to think about and map over. How we go about, running practices and interacting and marketing and interfacing with people. And I always, you always elevate the conversation around hospitality and consumer behavior and how to speak. And that's, without that, we don't have practices. And so thank you for getting to the root cause of how to change things in a positive way. And we also, you also have your Consumer Health Summit on October 25th through 27th. I know it's not open to everybody, but if they have some level of interest, can you just say something about that, just so we know? We have the link up, if you could just share about that piece so that you can be recognized for that.
Well, thank you so much. And as I mentioned, Consumer Health Summit is a founder community that I've been leading since 1994. It's an invitational group, including a lot of the leading as well as upcoming founders, men and women who have founded companies in supplements, nutrition, and of course, in the last 10 to 15 years, apps, wearables, the new health technology, those kinds of things, and that are not only serving consumers with products that have integrity and products that have efficacy. They have really prowess at building the businesses that they're building. And they also have purpose and heart and take real joy in collaborating with people who share that same purpose. The practitioners that we have in most cases have either exited or de-emphasized clinical practice and have either exited to or added to their activities entrepreneurial businesses like supplements, like nutrition, best-selling authors, people like that.
Right.
So typically someone who's pure clinician is not someone you'd find in our group, but somebody who either aspires to or has already launched and is scaling something that we could call extra clinical, some other kind of entrepreneurial venture related to their clinical practice. We have a number of those as well.
Yeah, it's the who's who of like all the innovation going on in healthcare. So thank you, Michael, for offering. Thank you to my colleagues. I'm so grateful. And we're going to complete week 15. Thank you so much for your input and your support. And to all the listeners, we love and respect you, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.